SBO is the best.
Okay, let's lock in. So for this video, we're going to talk about bones, joints, muscles, tendons, and other parts of a synovial joint like ligaments, cartilage, synovial fluid. And what you really want to be able to do by the end of this video is to be able to identify key bones at the major joints in the body, explain the structure of the skeleton and how it helps with movement, explain the different functions of the skeleton and be able to apply them to sports, identify the major muscles in the body, explain the role of tendons, describe the structure of a synovial joint and how it prevents injury, link joint type to movement, and be able to explain antagonistic muscle pairs and the different types of contractions as well. All right, let's start by looking at the different bones that you must know at different areas of the body. At the head/neck area, we have the cranium, which is your skull, and we also have the vertebral column, which protects your spine and runs all the way down the middle of your back. The vertebral column is made up of individual bones, and these individual bones are called vertebrae. Vertebrae. So at the head and neck, we have the skull and the vertebrae. At the shoulder, we have the scapula, which is your shoulder blade bone. And we also have the humerus, which is found at the upper arm here. At the chest, we have your ribs, which make up the rib cage, and the pelvis, which is this breastbone here in the middle. Then at the elbow, we have the humerus, which is the upper arm bone, like we mentioned before, and we have the radius and the ulna. So always remember the way to distinguish between the radius and the ulna is the radius is on the thumb side and the ulna is the other one. So remember that whenever you want to label a diagram with bones. Next, we have bones at the hip. At the hip, we have the pelvis. This huge bone right here is the pelvis, and we have the femur, which is the upper leg bone, the thigh bone right here. Moving down at the knee, we have again the femur, and we have the tibia and fibula. So your tibia is your shin bone, and your fibula is also on your lower leg next to your tibia. And in addition, we also have a small bone that sits at the front of the knee here, your kneecap, which is called the patella. So if I was to draw that looking sideways, it would look something like this right here, and that is your patella. Your patella. Now moving down to your ankle. At the ankle, we have the tibia, we have the fibula, and we have a small bone down here called the talus. So the talus is sort of this section of bone here at the ankle. If I just shade it in here, and we can see a sideways view as well of the talus down here. So it looks something like this at the ankle. So those are the bones you need to know. These are the different bone types. We have short bones, which are important for fine, controlled movement. An example of a short bone is a talus. We have long bones, which are important for gross movements, or big, powerful movements. For example, the femur and the humerus. We have flat bones, which are important for protection of vital organs. For example, the skull protects your brain, the ribs and the sternum protects your lungs and your heart. And we have irregular bones, which are important for muscle attachment. So like for example, vertebrae have a very irregular shape. They probably look something like this, a bunch of different areas for muscle attachment. Okay, now onto the functions of the skeleton. This is why the skeleton is important. And for this course, you need to know these main 6 functions and be able to apply them to physical activity. So we have support. The skeleton holds you upright, and it gives your body a structure, because without it you would basically just collapse on the floor like a pancake. And this is important in sport, because in a lot of sports you need to be able to hold your posture, like for example in sprinting, or when you're holding your posture in gymnastics. Next, we have protection, which is particularly provided by flat bones, are obviously there to help protect your vital organs. So that's another function of the skeleton. For example, in contact sports, your ribs would be able to protect your lungs, to prevent your lungs or even your heart from being damaged. Next, we have movement. So bones allow movement because they act like levers, and they connect to muscles to be able to allow motion. And we're going to look at what connects bone to muscle shortly in this video. And so for any movement, whether it's kicking, running, throwing, jumping, bones are very important for that. Next, we have muscle attachment. So the skeleton provides the body a shape, but it also provides places for muscles to attach, which again links to movement. Next, we have mineral storage. The skeleton stores minerals like calcium to help the bones be strong, and stronger bones reduce the risk of injury in sports. Lastly, we have blood cell production. Blood cells are produced in the bone in bone marrow. And this is important because, for example, red blood cells being produced help to carry oxygen around the body. And this is important for activities that are endurance based and rely on oxygen to be able to provide energy for the body. So remember these 6 functions: support, protect, move, attach, store, and produce. Okay, now let's look at the muscles of the body that you need to know, starting with the muscles at the shoulder. At the shoulder, we have the deltoids. Deltoids, this muscle right here, your shoulder muscle, and the deltoids are important for lifting the arm away from the body, which is a movement called abduction. And we're going to look at the different types of movements shortly in this video as well. So deltoids are responsible for abduction of the upper arm. Next, we have the pectorals. The pectorals are your chest muscles, and they help with any pushing movements and also help bringing the arm across the body. Next, we have your latissimus dorsi. So these 2 big muscles down here in your back, that's your latissimus dorsi. And your latissimus dorsi pulls the arm down and back. Next, we have your rotator cuff. So your rotator cuff is actually not one muscle. The rotator cuff is found within the shoulder area, and it's a group of 4 muscles and the different soft tissues that connect to those muscles. It's found somewhere around here. You don't need to know the actual individual 4 muscles, but just know it's found within the shoulder, and it helps to stabilize the shoulder during movement, which is important for injury protection. And it's also important for rotation, hence the name rotator cuff. Next muscle, we have your biceps, found here at the front of the upper arm, and your biceps help to bend the elbow, and this movement is called elbow flexion. Next, we have the triceps at the back of the upper arm. Your triceps are important for straightening the elbow. So they straighten the elbow, which is called elbow extension. Next, we have your abdominals right here. So this whole area is made up of your abdominal muscles, and your abdominals are important for trunk stability, posture, and transferring force between the upper and the lower areas, and sideways as well, of your body. Next, we have hip flexors. Again, hip flexors, we can draw them here. So if I was to draw my hip flexors, they would be somewhere here like this. And hip flexors help with driving the knee up, and we call that movement hip flexion. So if you think about your knee driving up, like for example when you're sprinting or doing any similar movement, that movement is hip flexion. Next we have your gluteals, which are your bum muscles. Your gluteals are important because they create hip extension, which is driving your leg back down and backwards. So again, if we go to this sideways diagram, if you're bringing your leg back down and even driving it backwards, then that would create hip extension, and that's powered by your gluteals. Next we have your quadriceps. Your quadriceps at the front of your thigh here, they actually refer to as quadriceps group because they are made up of 4 different muscles, but you don't need to know the actual 4 individual muscles. Just know these are your quadriceps. And at the back of your thigh we have the hamstrings, the hamstring group, again made up of different individual muscles. And the quadriceps are important for straightening the knee, which we call knee extension, and the hamstrings help with bending the knee, which is called knee flexion. The hamstrings also can help to extend the hip, so hip extension, but its main job is to bend the knee. Similarly, the quadriceps can also help with hip flexion, so bringing the knee up, but its main job is to straighten the knee. Next, we have the gastrocnemius, which is your calf muscle here at the back of your lower leg. The gastrocnemius helps with pointing the toes down, and that's a movement which we refer to as plantar flexion. In a minute, we're going to go through these movements and define what they are. And the other muscle at the front of your lower leg is your tibialis anterior, and this creates dorsiflexion, which is the movement where your toes come up. Okay, now that we have talked about bones and muscles, it's important to remember that tendons connect muscle to bone. So tendons attach muscle to bone. So if I was to draw an example on the bone diagram here, let's say I draw your bicep. Bicep is sitting nicely right here. The bicep muscle at the front of your upper arm. That bicep would be connected, would attach onto your lower arm here, and when it contracts, it pulls on your lower arm to create elbow flexion, which basically drives your lower arm up. So tendons attach muscle to bone and help with movement. In addition to tendons, we have ligaments which attach bone to bone. Now let's look at what a synovial joint is made out of. So a synovial joint is a freely moving joint, and you have synovial joints all over the body, and these are the different components of a synovial joint and what they do. So we have the synovial membrane, which is what produces synovial fluid. Synovial fluid is the fluid that lubricates the joints so that your bones don't grind. You have the joint capsule, which is like a sleeve, a tough sleeve that closes and supports the joint. We have the bursa. The bursa are small fluid-filled sacs that reduce friction and they help to cushion the joint. We have cartilage, which covers the bone ends to provide friction so they don't rub together, and it also helps to absorb shock. And again, the ligaments, which connect bone to bone. And these are the 2 types of joints you need to know and where they are found. So hinge joints are found at the elbow, knee, and ankle. And hinge joints, basically think of a door hinge. They just move back and forth. They open and close, they flex and they extend. And ball and socket joints found at the hips and the shoulder, it sort of looks like this. So you have a socket here and a ball, so the bone fits into this cup-like socket. So this is an oversimplification, but that's what ball and socket joints look like. So those are two types of joints you need to know. Now let's look at different types of movements and their definition. These are the different movements you need to know, and also where they are found in the body. So flexion, whenever there's a decrease in angle at the joint, that's flexion. Extension, wherever there's an increase in the angle of the joint. Abduction is when the limb is moving away from the body. Adduction is when your limb is moving back towards the body. Rotation, specifically at the shoulder, is twisting of the arm around the long axis of the shoulder. Circumduction at the shoulder is a circular movement of the shoulder. So when your arm is moving in a cone shape, and I'm going to show you a quick diagram. This is an example of what circumduction would look like. You can see the cone-like movement at the arm. And finally, we also have plantar flexion and dorsiflexion. Okay, now let's talk about antagonistic muscle pairs. Muscles work in pairs because you need different muscles to have different roles to be able to enable movement. So these are the two roles you need to know. We have the agonist and the antagonist. The agonist muscle is the prime mover. So this is the main muscle that is contracting to create the movement. And we have the antagonist muscle, which relaxes or lengthens to allow the movement to happen. So the antagonist can also work to control the movement. Okay, let's look at some easy examples of antagonistic muscle pairs in action. So if we go to the biceps, right, for a bicep curl, for example, you have the upward phase and the downward phase. The upward phase, which is elbow flexion, your biceps are the agonist because they are contracting to pull on the lower arm to create elbow flexion. So they are the agonists because they create that movement. Meanwhile, your triceps, on the other hand, are the antagonist because they are relaxing to allow that upward phase of the bicep curl to happen. Next, we can also analyze the antagonistic muscle pair action that happens at the knee. For example, when you are kicking a football. So the actual kicking motion of stretching your leg out, that would be knee extension because you're straightening your knee. And the agonist for that would be your quadriceps. The antagonist would be your hamstrings. Now for knee flexion, when you're bending your knee, bending the leg at the knee, the hamstrings would be the agonist and the quadriceps would be the antagonist. And finally, for an ankle example, plantar flexion, the gastrocnemius would be the agonist for that, and dorsiflexion, the tibialis anterior would be the agonist for that. And vice versa, for plantar flexion, the tibialis anterior would be the antagonist, and for dorsiflexion, the gastrocnemius would be the antagonist. Lastly, let's look at the types of contractions. So we have three types of contractions. They can be classed under two categories. So we have isometric contractions and isotonic contractions. So isometric basically means there is no movement in the muscle length stays the same under tension or as it's producing force. And isotonic, we have two types of contractions. On the isotonic, we have concentric and eccentric. Isotonic just means the muscle is changing length. So concentric means the muscle is shortening while producing force. Eccentric means the muscle is lengthening under tension or while producing force. So these are the three types of contractions you need to know: isometric, concentric, and eccentric. Okay, that is it for this video. I usually recommend for students to just bang out practice papers because this is one of those fundamental topics that you just need to master and get it out the way because it sets you up for the other things you're going to encounter in this course. So check out our platform, Super PE Online, the best PE platform in the world, for a bunch of e-learning resources that will help you to ace this topic. All right, see you in the next video.